All right, guys, our next guest has been for the longest time doing phenomenal work as an analyst and reporter for the UFC and ESPN. Her excellent commentary on Dana White's Contender Series, the host of One on One, the real Captain Marvel and a former fighter herself, which is why she is perfect to help us preview UFC 281. Laura Sanko, welcome back to, I guess this is like, is this your official Australian home? Like, can we classify that? Whatever it is, welcome back to your little Australian chateau here with Submission Radio. It's great to have you.
1,000% this is my Australian home. And if I have not done enough shoeies and enough appearances on Submission Radio to have that dual citizenship, I don't know what else I need to do at this point, but I'm just going to keep coming on regardless.
The citizenship is in the mail, 100%. We've stolen you from Megan Anderson. We're very happy about that. There's a lot to talk about, and we'll get straight into it. By the way, you coming on at a decent time for once. We're very happy that we could make this work, and very happy that finally we can do a preview show with you, because we've been wanting to do this for a long time. And what better one to start off with than UFC 281? So let's talk Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. If you've seen any of Israel's fight camp from his footage, I got to say, man, he's spoken about how insanely hard they're training. Dan Hooker's been talking about it, about how it's so much more intense, so much more harder. You gave everyone like a kick in the ass compared to all the other camps. And he actually compared it to when like Mayweather fought Pacquiao, and how Mayweather was like, if there was ever a fight I need to win, it's this one. And he feels the same here. But obviously one of the biggest questions is, how do you think it affects Israel mentally going to this one, knowing that he's lost twice before? And I used, loss with sort of some caveats, but he has been knocked out before. How do you think that weighs mentally on him coming into this one?
Well, I mean, there's a reason that it's the biggest storyline coming into this fight, because it is the biggest storyline coming to this fight. And there's no way to dance around the idea that this is not a major factor for Israel Adesanya. I mean, I think, it works both in Alex's favor and to Izzy's detriment to some extent. But I think that that's why we've seen a lot of discussion coming out of his camp about how different the training was this time. There's different meaning involved in a fight like this. And I really appreciated the other day when he talked about how the fact that this is a personal fight to him. It's business, of course. It's always business. The next fight in front of you is always going to be the most important fight. There's no denying that there's something extra on this fight for Izzy, because I think especially when you have reached the heights that he has reached, you have lapped the division to a great degree. You're well on the way of, you're chomping at the heels of a lot of Anderson Silva's records. To know that there's a guy out there that may have your number, and that's the big word. He may have your number. I think you could be great without perfection, but Izzy needs to answer that question. I mean, he's always going to be great, regardless of what happens on Saturday. That's not going to change anything. But I think for him personally, as a fighter, as a human being, he needs to answer that question. And I mean, we're just days away from getting it answered. But I think it's been a major component of why the camp was so different for them. And I think that it in turn has, this high tide has lifted all of the boats coming out of City Kickboxing, and I'm expecting some sensational performances.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line for City Kickboxing with this one. Obviously, Carlos Ulberg, it's always important to see how he goes. But then, Brad Riddell, he's got a lot on the line here. Dan Hooker, a lot on the line for Dan. And here, there's big stakes on the line for Israel because of this history. I wonder, though, like, the interesting thing about the narrative is, Alex did beat Israel in the kickboxing twice, but, arguably Israel won that first fight, and he was winning that second one dominantly until Alex caught him. So I wonder, like, what do you notice from those fights when you watch them, and what do you think Israel needs to do in order to avoid getting caught by that huge left again?
Well, I mean, the big difference when you watch them, and you're absolutely right. I scored. Now, I'm certainly not nearly as proficient at scoring kickboxing as I am scoring MMA, but just at a glance, I would have scored the first fight for Izzy. And I think that was apparent both on the look on his face and the look on Alex's face when they announced the winner. But regardless, Alex got the nod. And then the second fight, Izzy was doing very, very well. So it would be easy to say, does Alex really have Izzy's number? Now, the flip side of that is something I think is not getting talked about enough necessarily. And I don't know that it influences the fight to a huge which degree, but I think it's an interesting thing to bring up. The difference in their experience levels when they fought in kickboxing was drastically different. Izzy had almost 100 fights between his amateur and pro kickboxing career at that point, and Alex, I want to say, was around 20. So, you know, when I talked to Alex Pereira's, one of his coaches, not Glover Teixeira, but his other coach, Plinio Cruz, was my coach when I lived in New York. So I had a long conversation with them.
Nice.
And they feel very confident that is the greenest, like, you know, the greenest version of Alex was still good enough to beat Izzy twice, and that they feel very strongly that Alex, I should say, has gone on to face much better kickboxers. Now, that's obviously the key term here, right? Like, this is not a kickboxing fight. It just isn't. And I mean, we could geek out about all the reasons why things are different, but to me, to go back to your initial question, the biggest difference for Izzy and the biggest thing that he's going to have to control to stay away from, whether it's that left hand that we always like to point out or the right. I mean, we know that Alex can knock you out, or the knees, right? He's got a lot of weapons. He carries power in all 8 limbs. Izzy has to control the range. And the range for Izzy in an MMA fight is so different than the way that they fought kickboxing. You know, Izzy was a much more aggressive, in-your-face, foot on the pedal striker in kickboxing. Some of that is the glove size, and some of that is the fact that you don't just simply are not thinking about takedowns or getting caught pinned up against a fence. So these are all factors that change things. But Izzy's ability to manage that range, it's something that we always talk about when you discuss Izzy's striking game. And I got to believe that he's going to be able to do that this time, but he's going to have to do it while he's being pressured to a level that I don't know that we've seen him be pressured before, because I think that Alex, the way that his striking game has translated to MMA, he really hasn't had to change it very much because he has not been facing grapplers. So, you know, Alex has been, I don't want to say he's been rushed into this spot, because I think he's deserving of this spot, but we'd be silly not to kind of tip our hat to the fact that he got put here quickly, because if he had been run through a 10-fight gauntlet, including a bunch of wrestlers, he may not have been as shiny as he is coming into this moment. So I don't know. I think the biggest key for Izzy is going to be controlling that range and just really doing what Izzy does best, which is making sure he controls the range. And by that, I mean, obviously, the kicking range versus the boxing range versus when they go to the clinch, but then also the positions of the fight, you know, not getting his back put on the fence where Alex could potentially clinch up and wear him out a little bit. It's a fascinating one. And as I've thought about it, I go back and forth about a lot of the factors in this one. That's why it's so fun.
That experience thing that you bring up, that's a very interesting point that I don't think anyone's really brought up before. So that's really cool that you bring that to the table, and that really gets me thinking. I want to say as well, like, I know you mentioned how like Alex wouldn't look as shiny if he had to fight, you know, more fights, potentially fight some wrestlers. I have to kind of tip my hat to Israel for this, and because this is a guy when you know, all right, this is a guy that I've lost to. When I'm going to be fighting him, they're going to be replaying that knockout loss to him over and over and over, leading into the fight. For many, that would be kind of like the worst thing that they could see, obviously played over and over until lead up. And you're basically deciding to fight a guy when you're one of the biggest names in the sport, because, you know, okay, I'm going to take this negative and I'm going to flip it into a positive. I'm going to make some money off this, and I'm going to go out there. I'm going to beat it. But at the same time, I think I don't know. What do you think, Laura? I feel like it takes extreme mental toughness to say, okay, I'm going to fight this guy and actually agree to it. Because who are we kidding? If Israel's like, why would I fight Alex Pereira? He's only had like a couple of fights. I'll just fight someone else. I don't think it happens, you know?
I think I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a number of things. I think it's an indication of his self-belief. I mean, he is betting on himself in the biggest way possible because of all the factors that you just mentioned. But I think more than anything, what I love about Izzy, although I'm sure he has moments where anybody in his position would have moments of you know, loving that championship life and maybe being, I'll just put it that way, loving that championship life. But I think at his core, I think Israel is incredibly good at checking his own ego. And that, to me, is why he wanted to do this and why he's willing to sit there and watch that footage of him being laid out, on the Glory Kickboxing canvas over and over and over again. And, the footage of Alex Pereira's kid making fun of it. I mean, there's a lot that you have to kind of sit there and watch, and kind of like, I don't know, I feel like the more you watch it though, and the more you just walk right into it, the more that Izzy is walking right into it, the more you take the power away from those moments. Because I think if you shy away from it, you're giving it what Alex would want it to have for you. And another thing that came out of my conversation with Plinio, which I found fascinating, is that Alex has his own version of that with Izzy. It's not a moment where he was laid out on the canvas, but there's an interview that Izzy did where he said, Alex is going to be that guy who's, while I'm champion, he's going to be sitting in a bar somewhere saying, oh, I beat that guy one day, waiting to get his, hopefully I can say this here, but waiting to get his dick sucked by a crack whore.
Of course you could say that here. What do you mean? This is the place where you say that. Anyway.
I figured as much.
Me and Casper have to make money from our sponsors or other ways to keep the show. Just so you know.
I figured I was in a safe place.
What a savage burn though. That's like the most Israel quote ever. Fuck, what a savage burn.
Yeah. But apparently that really stuck with Alex. And Plinio told me that literally from the moment he saw that interview until now, like that interview, he sent it to me separately. He's like, we need to talk about this because this is the moment when Alex set his targets on Izzy. And how long ago? I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay, well, outside the crack whore remarks and outside the history between these two guys and the personal nature of the fight, what do you think is at stake here as far as, I guess, not only the legacy, but also the criticism recently that Israel's been receiving for, some of his past fights maybe not being as exciting as people expected them to be, and maybe being a little bit underappreciated, going through that almost GSP phase where, GSP got the same criticism, but people look a lot more fondly at him nowadays. What do you think about the criticism? Do you think it's warranted in any way? Do you think it's just sort of a misconception about his style? And what do you think's on the line here as far as potentially changing that? And do you think it even really matters?
Well, I certainly don't think it matters to him because I think champions have to have the mindset of, especially once you reach that level, people forget, gosh, how much is at stake? It's easy to say that. Like, obviously we all know there's a lot at stake, but I don't think people really understand the dollar value difference between being a champion and being the number one contender. It is a chasm of difference in terms of your earning potential, your sponsorship deals, and of course the belt itself is something precious, and it's the legacy that you want to build. So I don't love the narrative around this idea of Izzy not being an exciting enough fighter. I understand it. I am a dyed-in-the-wool MMA fan who's excited with every squirt of blood that I see. Like, I am that fan. But I also can respect a man who has built a game that is going to be a long-lasting game, that's going to allow him to have, health, wealth, and prosperity many, many years to come. And it's not his fault he's so goddamn good at chess, right? Like, there's an elegance and a beauty and an art to what he does. And I personally think it's up to the challenger. If you want an exciting fight, if you want to bring out the dog in him, which we've seen done, like, it's not like Izzy's always in a boring fight. It's like people forgot about the Kelvin Gastelum fight, right? They forget that he so easily knocked out Paulo Costa, and we just talk about Jared Cannonier and Yoel Romero. Like, it's not even the majority of his fights. I think there is a disrespect that comes with anything athletic that someone is able to make look effortless, or at least less effort than their peers. And that's what Izzy has done to the striking game and, frankly, to the whole takedown defense game. He makes it look effortless, and I think to some degree that's frustrating and irritating to people because at our hearts, we're all a bunch of dickhead barbarians that want to see people's arms get broken and blood splattering.
You're talking to two dickheads right now, so you 100% nailed it, Laura.
dickhead too. Like I can appreciate the art that Izzy brings to being a champion. And you make a great point. Like, we were having these same conversations about GSP, but we don't have those conversations about GSP anymore because all we talk about is his legacy and the records and the long tenure that he had at welterweight. There will come a day when no one talks about, oh, we wish Izzy was more exciting. It's going to be, look how long he was champion. Look who he beat, beating Robert Whittaker more than one time. Like, the man checks a lot of boxes. So I think he has every right to say, I'm going to fight the way that I fight because it's got me where I am today. Why would I change that? But, and I don't mean to make this the longest answer in the history of the universe.
That's all right.
Alex Pereira is going to bring a version of Izzy out that I think we all will enjoy watching. I think everybody knows that. While I do expect Izzy to remain defensive and elusive in the way that he usually is. And I think that he's going to, like I said earlier, want to stay at that preferred Izzy range. Alex Pereira is going to pressure him in a way that other people have not been able to. I think the height, them being the same height, makes a massive difference because that's not something usually that Izzy has to deal with. And then the mentality factors that we talked about before. If Alex knows, I've beat this guy twice, I can stand with this guy. And in his mind, and his camp has told me, they don't feel like Izzy is even top 3 in terms of strikers that Alex has faced, just pure strikers.
Just quickly before you go, Dennis, just going back to the point before, like I always think of Bas Rutten saying he's in so much pain that he has to walk backwards to his mailbox just to check his mail. And so you think about that and you think about like the short window that fighters have to make money. Like, we can work till like 65, 67, no worries. You don't see 67-year-old fighters fighting. You're going to make most of your money by like, more or less 40 years old. If you don't have a commentary gig waiting for you, like you're not going to make much money. So and then Eugene Berriman talking about like, you see some of the guys that have the fight of the night. It's like, that's great, but you see where their brains are in, however many years or decades. So, and the sad reality is, as much as we all love the blood and love the sport, sometimes I think like the guys who had, fight of the night a year, 2, 3, whatever, 5 years ago, not to be disrespectful, but it's kind of like, who cares? Not who cares, but because those are the memories to remember, but it's almost like the fans are not going to pay your medical bills when you can't do certain things. So I understand like later in life wanting to preserve that. 100% respect people sometimes taking a preserved approach, so to speak.
And you know what? Like when you look back on it, guys like Floyd, any champion from Floyd Mayweather to Mike Tyson to any kind of champion, even if you go back to Muhammad Ali, there's always been criticisms of them. And there's always been this weird narrative, like this GSP narrative of like, oh, this guy didn't have the best fight, or this guy's not really delivering for this. So it's almost expected with someone who's as great as Israel. But I wonder, Laura, like I want to find out from you, what is your prediction here? Like, who are you leaning towards? Because you have this really great insight on Alex that most people don't. I want to sort of hear, how do you actually think this one plays out?
Well, I can't give a pick because I'm working the fights, but I will give you, no, it's okay. I'll give you my thoughts. I think that we're going to see a lot of pressure from Alex. I think it's going to be an extraordinary amount of pressure. And I think it's going to be pressure that we're not used to seeing Izzy deal with, more akin to the Gastelum fight, if I'm being honest. I think that we're going to see Izzy look to be very defensive early. I'm not saying it's going to be a boring fight. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight, but it's a 5-round fight. And I think the longer this fight goes, the more it's going to favor Israel Adesanya for a number of reasons. So I expect Izzy to be conservative early, but as he settles in and makes those reads and puts together those algorithms that he's so amazing at putting together, I think we will start to see him, the momentum will swing in his favor. I'll put it that way.
Is the fight hitting the ground?
Yeah, that's the question, right? I don't think it will, but I think if it does, I'll say this: my jaw will not hit the floor if we see Izzy shoot a takedown. I think it will come from me because, kind of coupled with that idea of Alex being the way greener version than he is when they fought in Glory. Alex has only been training MMA full time since his LFA fight. So what is that, like 2 years? Something
like that, yeah.
Insane.
He's been doing, a little bit here, a little bit there, but full time dedicated to MMA 2 years. And as we all know, when you're when you have a strong base, picking up the other base. So for him, picking up grappling, that takes a long time. And Izzy is way ahead of him in terms of that. Now, of course, he's training with Glover Teixeira, Wellington Turman, Plino Cruz, and they're all excellent grapplers. Like, he's at the right camp. So I'm not saying he would be lost on the ground. It's just not his easiest path to victory. But I think it'd be pretty cheeky if Izzy started mixing in some takedowns, if for nothing else, to set up even more of his striking. Because if he can get Alex thinking like, oh my gosh, is Izzy going to actually start mixing it up and wrestling here? That opens up a lot of opportunities striking wise.
Yeah.
Also, like with him already being the first double champion in Glory history, holding those belts, imagine him now becoming UFC champion, adding that to his resume. Not only is this probably one of the highest level combat sports fights of all time, but it would make Alex one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time. It's actually insane. But Laura, you mentioned swing before, so I got to say, swing these nuts into the holiday season.
That was the best segue ever.
You said it like 5 hours ago, and I'm like, this is the one. This is what I'm clinging to. Swing these nuts into the holiday season with our friends and the UFC's friends, Manscaped, with the Lawnmower 4.0, the pound-for-pound greatest grooming tool in the world. Or you can get the Lawnmower 3.0 from all Woolworths stores across Australia. Makes a fantastic gift. You can even go with the Platinum Package 4.0, the best value deal yet, with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Ultra Premium Body Wash, Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, the Ultra Premium deodorant, the Crop Preserve anti-chafing ball deodorant, the Crop Revive ball spray toner. That's a lot of things to make you smell fantastic and look fantastic. When you get free gifts, free underwear, the boxes, and the Shed travel bag. Great value, great gift. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And even though Santa Claus has that beard, make no mistake, he is shaved down below. And that is thanks to Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping today with the code word submission. While you're at it, why not make some cash on the fights this weekend? Our friends at MyBookie are giving you guys 100% match deposit with the code word submission. That's dollar for dollar, all the way up to $1,000. Go on MyBookie today and make some money. Huge fights on the line. Huge stakes on the line. And there's only one place to make that money. That is with our friends at MyBookie and the code word submission. Bet anything, anytime with MyBookie, Cass.
By the way, Laura, how heartbroken were you when you couldn't watch the BT Sport preview? Dan Hardy's great breakdown show.
Oh, extremely heartbroken. Are you talking about because I live in the United States?
That's right. That's right. No more of that worry with NordVPN.
I'm not.
Beg your pardon?
Can you imagine how I might have made that happen?
I know, with our good friends at NordVPN. This wasn't meant to sound so infomercially, but I know you, like a lot of people, get shitty when, like, you're scrolling through Twitter and then there's like fight highlights or whatever, and then it's like, oh, sorry, the uploader has not made this available in your country. It's like, am I in fucking Narnia? Like, I'm in Australia. What do you mean? Where do I have to live for this? But in BT Sport, obviously, they do phenomenal content there in the UK, the Dan Hardy breakdown show. So if you want to watch that and you're stuck behind that geo-lock, don't worry about it. NordVPN has you sorted. Costs a few bucks every month, and you can watch anything you want. You can watch all sorts of other streaming services. Like you can watch, different stuff on Netflix, and you can also get your gifts cheaper this holiday season. Because let's be honest, the same thing costs different things. The same thing costs different in different countries. You've also got the threat protection and no speed throttling or buffering when you're watching all that 4K goodness. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. NordVPN.com/submission. Link in the description below. Huge discount, 4 months free. Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee means you can try it risk-free today and enjoy those breakdowns, whatever else you need to watch. NordVPN, the only place to go to unlock the internet and secure yourself today. But Laura, let's talk about Dustin Poirier taking on Michael Chandler, because it's not only guaranteed fireworks, but probably one of the last great matchups between the old guard of the lightweights. Huge fight, which very much holds the key to Chandler's dreams. If he wins, he can fight for the belt or fight Conor. But with Poirier, he very much holds the cardio and the boxing advantage. So wrestling will be key for Chandler. But most people don't see Chandler holding Dustin down for 3 straight rounds, maybe 2. So if he's able to do it, what's the path? How do you see it playing out realistically?
Well, I think Chandler's going to do what Chandler does, which is entertain, and that's going to make for a great first round, and probably a great second round as well, because Chandler does have enough cardio where he can pedal to the metal, foot on the gas for a solid 2 rounds. But I think, and I love that this is a 3-round fight, to be honest with you, as much as, even though I love this matchup, and usually I'd be like, oh, I want 5 rounds of this. I actually like that this is the condensed version, because we're going to see these guys go absolutely after it. Michael Chandler has an incredible ability to walk right into the fire, walk right into it. Because I think he has realized a big part of his legacy, I'm not going to say all of it, but a big part of his legacy is going to be the 3-time Bellator champion that came to the UFC and just shook things up, right? Not necessarily that he's going to become this long-standing, 10-time defending lightweight champion, but he came in here and he upset the apple cart and continued to sort of keep that top 5 an interesting place to be. So I expect Michael Chandler to be very, very aggressive early. I think Dustin's going to be a little bit more cautious, look to utilize his calf kicks. Dustin Poirier has a phenomenal calf kick, and we know that's something that Michael Chandler has struggled with at times. For Dustin, he's just got to look out for those big winging shots. I think if he does get taken down, though, it's interesting because Dustin certainly has an ability to operate off of his back, but the Charles Oliveira fight was a little bit illuminating for me, because I don't know if it was, I'm guessing it was because Charles was on top of him, but it was a side of Dustin's ground game I wasn't used to seeing, where he seemed to be accepting the position a little bit more than what we've seen in the past. I don't think he does that with Michael Chandler, I guess is my point. But Michael Chandler has an extraordinary anti-jiu-jitsu style of grappling. Do I think that we spend long stanzas on the ground? I don't know. I think certainly not early. I think these 2 are going to go out and they're gonna bang. And as much as Michael Chandler can find Dustin Poirier in the first round, this is going to be a phenomenal fight.
Yeah, and Chandler really possesses some interesting qualities about him. Obviously, like the wrestling and the excitement that he brings, but also, down the line, potentially a title fight if he does get to Islam, an interesting matchup. But then also an interesting matchup for Conor McGregor, because when you put those 2 together, there's also the possibility that, maybe that's an actual fight for Conor, whether he can come back and potentially have some success because of his power as well. So very interesting there. What about Carla Esparza defending her newly won UFC strawweight belt against the former champion Weili Zhang, who we last saw dominating and beating Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And many people expected her, with a devastating striking and improved wrestling, to run through Carla Esparza. But with Carla being the best wrestler Zhang has ever faced, how do you think she could keep up that output and defend the takedown? And also, do you feel like Carla's kind of criminally underrated here, like the stuff that she's been able to do in her career and the legacy that she's had, because she doesn't really kind of get the flowers that she deserves from a lot of the fans out there?
Carla's been underrated her entire career. I remember watching her in Invicta become champion in Invicta. Even back then, she doesn't have a big personality in the sense that she's going to talk a lot of shit on the microphone. She's not Joanna Jędrzejczyk with this boogie woman persona that strikes, fear into everybody. When you watch her before the fight, she's literally she looks like she's about to do her taxes. She's just so stone cold. She doesn't even hop around. It used to make me incredibly uncomfortable watching her.
She had a wedding coming up, but she did a fight before. Can you imagine that? Planning a wedding with a fight.
As she's getting announced by Bruce Buffer, she's just
did I send those invites? Did that person RSVP? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Exactly. Have I ordered the flowers? I can't remember. But the fact that she can be so put together and so stone cold speaks to the level of experience that she has. She is a collegiate wrestler. And she was a collegiate wrestler way before it was cool for women to be doing that, by the way. She's been honing her craft for a very long time. And I really get the sense that we are seeing peak Carla Esparza right now. And that's an exciting time for her to be a champion. That being said, I think that Zhang Weili's ceiling ultimately is a little bit higher than Carla's because of her physicality, because of her raw power. She's picking up Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
Speaking of feeling uncomfortable watching a video, I just wanted to grab my knees when
Put a belt on, Zhang. What are you doing?
Yeah, but she did it with relative ease. I mean, it was pretty impressive. That's a powerful woman. And I think that coming off the heels of a sensational knockout, retiring Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she's really firing on all cylinders, training in Thailand with the Hickman brothers now. So she's in the right place to be learning how to defend that very specific style, that folk style American collegiate wrestling that Carla Esparza brings. I think that this is a version of Zhang Weili that I would not want to be facing. I'll put it that way.
100%. All right, last one as we get out of your hair, Laura. Frankie Edgar having his final fight ever. Dan Hooker returning against the new king of the knee bar against Claudia Puelles at his original home of 155. Brad Riddell versus Renato Moicano has fireworks written all over. Dominic Reyes returning against Ryan Spann. Meatball Molly. And then let's be honest, Carlos Olberg going to make, the stands flood basically when he enters. What's the fight that gets you most excited? It's going to happen. We're talking about crack whores here. Why not? What is the fight outside of that one? Maybe that one that gets you most excited outside the main three.
Well, there's no doubt that Carlos Olberg does excite me. However, I can't even keep my mind straight now. That was phenomenal. For me, it's the Erin Blanchfield Molly Buchanan fight. I mean, that is a very, very fun fight. If people aren't familiar with Erin Blanchfield, she is a sensational jiu-jitsu player. I mean, she was kind of a bit of a prodigy, honestly, winning. God, I think it was like I don't remember which tournament it was, but she won a very high-level jiu-jitsu tournament when she was like 16 years old and just has continued to do great things since. That being said, I think that Molly McCann has just started to unlock her potential. And I think now that she's financially got guys, like everybody from Barstool Sports behind her, providing her with that financial backing, she's really been able to put together a custom camp that's been designed to bring her specific game to the highest level it can be. And we're seeing the results, but I think Meatball has a terrifically high ceiling. I love that woman so much, but I'm a huge Erin Blanchfield fan as well, way back from the Invicta days. So that's one I think is going to be incredibly exciting, and I can't wait to watch it. But yeah, Carlos Olberg. Yeah.
Black Jag coming to New York. Hey, I was gonna say that I don't know. I'm like, this card's really good, but then I'm like, it's gonna be an emotional roller coaster for me that I don't think I'm ready for. Like Frankie Edgar having his final fight in New York, Dan Hooker going back to 155, Brad Riddell with everything on the line. Like you just mentioned, Meatball Molly. What about just like the Carla Esparza coming in trying to get that appreciation from the fans that she's deserved for a really long time against one of these toughest people in the division. Israel figuring out this feud. It's like, this is basically like peak WWE back in the day, like storylines galore, WrestleMania, everything has a huge stake on the line. But we appreciate you joining us to break it all down. Of course, follow Laura at Laura_Sanko, one-on-one on YouTube. Her incredible work during the fights. I mean, you bring a certain buzz and excitement to every fight that you cover, Laura. Every time you're on there, every time you do something with the fights. I know all the fans love it, and so do we. And we appreciate you joining us to get us excited before things even get to take place.
And thank you for the very first time ever making me envision Santa's pubes. That's a really thought that I had never, in nearly 40 years, had never crossed my mind. So
it's going to happen. Look out for it. Hopefully I have good mops in New York.
He's going to slide down those chimneys somehow, right? So
I was thinking that.
It's a health and safety hazard, Laura.
Why do you think our presents are so good every year? All right. Have a great night, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.